This is a live mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We are on the air.
All right. I'd like to call the August 9th, 2018 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. First order of business to approve the July 2018 Selectmen's minute meetings.
Second.
All those in favor? I'm getting feedback on my mic. Item 3, this is the public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda this evening. Okay?
Geez, you.
Don't all rush up
It's
there.
gonna break the ice, right? Hi, I'm Judy Phillips, and I live at 16 Reed Lane, and I've been there for about 2 years now. Moved in November, and you've received letters from, I think, many of us, kind
have 'em right here.
explaining why we all really feel importantly that it's. Feel that it's important that the town take the road public. I just wanted to speak today about the safety factor of it being a public road versus a private road. After having been there for 2 winters and seeing the valiant efforts of the private contractors to shovel the snow or plow the snow in such long distances, what ends up by the middle of the winter and certainly by the end of the winter is a single trail that no 2 cars can go by at the same time, and getting out of the street when it's optimum conditions like a night like tonight is dangerous at best. I've been nearly hit just this week by a person from Connecticut that let their unhappiness be known that I was actually in front of them. And so when there's then piles of snow at the end of the street as well, because the contractors have no place else to put it, it makes it especially treacherous to get out of the street. So since we're there year-round, it's really important for us to be able to get in and out of the street on a regular basis, on a daily basis. My husband works in Biddeford. Each day has to get to Biddeford. So it's, that's kind of what I wanted to add tonight to the conversation and the discussion. I want to thank you all for letting us speak. I know there's a lot of us here represented. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll reconsider your decision about taking the road public.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Yep.
My name is Alan Lamb, and I live at 18 Reed Lane, right next to Judy. And I would like to second her comments. We've been taxpayers in this town for about 30 years now, and we finally became permanent residents a couple of years ago. So, and we've been doing a lot of volunteer work. We're full-time residents. We're not snowbirds. And we've been, as I said, doing a lot of volunteer work. So we're trying to contribute a lot to the town, but it's important to us to be able to get in and out of Reed Lane, even when the snow is piled high. So I would second Judy's request. I don't think there's anyone here that actually represents all of the residents up there, but I think you've received communications from the developer, which we all have received, and we would second those comments as well. But we would ask you to reconsider your vote. We didn't actually hear why that vote happened, but we would ask you to reconsider that vote and put it on the warrant for November. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Would anyone else like to speak before we move on to item agenda number 4? Does anyone on the board care to address this issue?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, moving on to item number 4, proposed ordinance change for the November town meeting ballot. Lori, would you like to take over?
Yes, so this is an opportunity to review the items that currently are planned for the November ballot. The first one is the victualers ordinance, and in your packet you have the language that has been reviewed by the town attorney. So the purpose of the edits and amendments was to include additional language to assist with the enforcement of those whom perhaps don't get a renewal license. The town attorney did find some other housekeeping language in reference to statutory requirements that she also included, and so you'll see that there are some additional amendments in that.
Sheila, you had something?
I was going to make a comment. A lot of that information, new information, is actually part of what the state asks of us. I don't know why we have to just reiterate it. I don't know why we're going to this extent, because the state does it anyway. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with what you have said. This was not Amy, this was another attorney in the firm. And she likes to make a lot of reference to state statute and beef up the language. So that's why we are certainly reviewing it with you guys tonight, whether some of it, the language in section 3, in determining whether to issue or deny an application, I think, although some of this is referenced in state statute, I think is helpful in terms of assisting a board through a process. Some of the section 1 definitions certainly are just a repeat of state statute. So it's up to the board, but these were the recommendations back from the attorney.
Okay.
Anyone else?
No.
Okay. Item B, telecommunications ordinance.
So I'll have Werner come up and address that.
Good evening. So we've been talking about this at the past couple of meetings here, and so what you have in front of you are some draft amendments to the town's wireless telecommunications ordinance. That ordinance was first put in place in 1999. Has not undergone any revisions since then. So as you can imagine, there's been a lot of changes, not only in terms of the technology, but also in terms of state and federal law surrounding telecommunications. So these ordinance amendments do two things. One, they bring us up to speed with some deficiencies that we have in our ordinance in regard to the Spectrum Act. And second, what it also does, it allows for the opportunity for small cellular node technology to be incorporated in town. These nodes essentially are about the size of a fire hydrant and would sit atop existing utility poles, and from what we understand, really help to address the dramatic increase in data demands that a lot of communities are facing. So that's the primary purposes of the amendments to the telecommunications ordinance.
I think there are two things that, Warner, you might know. One is the issue about whether it's within 50 feet of a home, the difference in the process, and secondly, that the land use ordinance would also have additions to the definitions.
That's correct, yes. So as part of this, as part of the process for the small scale cellular nodes, and this is a question of a matter of process. The attorney had originally listed a requirement that the cellular nodes potentially go to the planning board if there was a residence within 100 feet of these. Looking at the scale of these, I brought that requirement down to 50 feet as a recommendation. However, there is no requirement for these types of small-scale structures to go through a site plan review process. So it'll be a discussion with the planning board as to whether or not there's a desire on their part to review these. They go through. They have a fairly comprehensive list of technical requirements. These are not necessarily conditional uses. So we'll be having a discussion with the planning board in terms of what their thoughts are with potentially bringing some of these that are closer to homes to in front of the board.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Is there an overall plan to equip virtually all the poles with these small units?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. But this will allow that?
This would allow for that. Yep.
Any other discussion on this?
And the fact that on the back page, you'll also see that there are additional amendments to the land use ordinance in Article 2. And that's because we added definitions for these in the land use ordinance.
A lot of times we have ordinances that even though they're standalone and separate, they still interact with each other. And so where we have some definitions in the land use ordinance that relate to wireless telecommunications, you'll see that these particular definitions will need to be added to the land use ordinance so that the two remain in concert with each other.
Okay, moving on. C, medical marijuana storefront moratorium.
So this warrant article is a request to place a temporary moratorium on storefront, medical marijuana storefront. And as we've discussed this before, there's this rule essentially in the state that allows for the practice of patient cycling for medical marijuana caregivers. What this potentially allows, and a number of communities are dealing with this now, it allows for a caregiver to essentially operate out of a storefront. It would allow, the practice has been that that fifth patient that many of them have, you could conceivably, if you have a medical marijuana card, enter a storefront facility, become become that client for just a brief moment. You could become that fifth patient for the moment of the transaction, and then as you leave the storefront, you're no longer that fifth patient. So it's
So you can go back again?
that's correct. Yes.
Okay, so actually it's unlimited.
The next person in line then becomes the fifth. Becomes the the fifth.
This is crazy.
One as well. So what we're asking for is, we're asking for a temporary moratorium, really just a chance to take a pause and have some conversations and make a decision about long-term whether or not we think that this is an appropriate use for Kennebunkport.
Any thoughts? Yeah. Okay, I think Lori wants to know our consensus if we want to put this on the ballot.
I agree.
Yeah,
Any
Yes.
disagreement?
no.
Okay. There you go, Lori. And Warner, D, waterfront ordinance amendments. I believe that is, oh, I guess it's not
So I'm
Warner.
gonna have Chief Sanford come up, representing our piers and harbors, and so this is another example of where we made a couple of edits to address one issue, and the attorney came back with a whole bunch of other language changes. And we did not put them in this document because they were beyond housekeeping. And what we'll do is have a chance to review those more internally and perhaps bring those additional comments back for the June warrant. But right now, we're dealing with a simpler issue.
So it's basically clearing up a couple of definitions as far as moorings go. I was addressing an issue and found that the language was unclear, and added the language before you to try to address the intent of the moorings in the current ordinance to ensure that you are either a dues-paying member of the pier in good standing or a waterfront owner in Cape Porpoise.
So for a recreational boat, you don't have to be a shorefront owner. You could be living down Mills Road, but if you are in good stead at the pier, if you are a member of the pier, you could apply for a
Correct.
spot.
It's more for people who already have moorings. There's a waiting list. Correct me, Chief, if I'm misspeaking here, but it's my understanding that there's a waiting list down there for moorings, and they're not limited to residents of the town. The preference is for commercial fishermen.
Right.
And then resident mooring and non-resident mooring. But there were certain people who would come to the pier committee meeting that said, well, I'm not gonna use the pier, I have a mooring, but I have shorefront, and we said, okay. But I believe the incident arose where somebody was gonna lease somebody the use of their shorefront and therefore try to do the end around it, and this will correct that.
Okay, as I read it, it sounded like only,
It doesn't mean you get a mooring, Sheila, as much as,
I don't want one.
Okay. But what it means is people who have shorefront would not necessarily be able to get a mooring. The state statutes address that.
I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't just for the commercial vehicles and shorefront
No,
owners.
because you can be a recreational
Yeah.
peer due member.
Yes.
So we have different categories, and so recreational people can be a part of the pier and can get a mooring as well.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
All right.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Craig. Number 5, consideration of special town meeting regarding a conditional gift to the town of Kennebunkport for the benefit of American Legion Post number 159.
So as we discussed at your last meeting, the Gordon Trust would like to make a donation to the American Legion, but can't do it because they are not 501c3 status. They came and asked if the selectmen would be willing to accept a conditional gift on behalf of the American Legion and then turn it over to them. The board was in agreement. This would require a town meeting vote. So the question is whether we should put it on the November ballot or whether you wanted to hold a special town meeting.
I think we should, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'd rather hold a special town meeting. I don't think there's that many people.
Can you move your mic down, would you?
I don't think there's that many people who would be against it. So I'd just as soon
I'm with you.
do a special meeting.
Yep.
I agree with you, but it costs money to have a special town meeting, and if they don't need the money right away, this is what I told Lori, I would just as soon wait and put it on the ballot. Now, if they come to us and say that they want to, I'll hold a special town meeting next week. Can we find out first before we spend money to have a special town meeting?
Sure.
Perhaps, can you reach out to the American Legion, or if you can give me their contact information, I'll be happy. I'm a Legionnaire, not of this particular Legion, but I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to us.
So if they can wait, then we will wait, but otherwise, we should plan on bringing you a warrant article at your next meeting for perhaps the first meeting in September to be a special town meeting?
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
Yeah,
so.
if they need the money, I'm good to hold a special town meeting.
Yes,
How expensive would that be?
we would do it at this, in this, right? So, I mean,
Yeah,
We
we'd
have
do it at a
to-
meeting.
We have to pay a moderator, and then we have to pay for some clerks to check people in and assign.
Give 'em
I believe about $300 is the number
you know,
that I heard.
those.
yeah, I think it's one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't have any problem with that at all.
I don't either. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem. We'll find out what they need.
Yeah. Okay, number 6, presentation by town interns Lydia Ewell and Kendra O'Rourke.
So this summer, we have had 3 interns, but 2 of them are here tonight to do a presentation and tell you about what they've been able to accomplish this year. We have Lydia Elwell and Kendra O'Rourke with us. So who's first? And they have a few slides that are gonna pop up here for you.
Hi, so my name is Lydia Elwell, and this summer I worked as the cemetery and property intern. So I worked mostly with the cemetery committee. I have some members here tonight, which is pretty cool. So I'm a student at University of Maine. I'm going into my 3rd year. In a few weeks, I study history and education there. Yeah, and then if you just go to the next slide, actually. Cool. So I'm just going to tell you about some of the things that I spent my summer doing. So one of the big projects that I'm just finishing up this week, actually, was mapping each cemetery using GPS technology. So I worked with Tom Burns, who lent me and Kendra one of his machines, and I went out with the cemetery committee to go get GPS points for each of the cemeteries, and it'll eventually be on a map, which will be accessible to the committee to flag the cemeteries for any future construction. And then something else I've done is I updated the historical database of the cemeteries, so they have a big master spreadsheet, which I updated throughout the summer, and I added map, block, and lot numbers for each cemetery. And then another project that I worked on was creating a database of contact information for people who have cemeteries on their property, which is important for the committee because they have to access these cemeteries through people's private property, so it's important to keep good contact with those owners and let them know what they're up to. And then the property side of the internship, I mostly did deed research, and Becky Nolet, the tax assessor for the town, helped me with that a lot. We went to the Registry of Deeds a couple times to research restrictions and information about town-owned properties that were in the vault of the town office, but not like compiled or organized in any certain way. So that's what I spent a good portion of the summer doing as well. So yeah, that's what I've been doing through these past few months, and I just wanted to say thank you to the selectmen and the town for giving me the opportunity to get some experience doing this. It's been really influential to me, and also thank you to the cemetery committee for volunteering a lot of time to work with me, and of course to Becky Nolet, who's really helped me a lot with deed research, and she's taken me to Alfred a bunch of times, so that's been awesome. So yeah.
How many cemeteries did you work with?
I think there are like 75 in the town, so most of them were mapped, but a few exceptions. Yeah, and there's a picture of one too. I think it's Cape Porpoise.
That's the Hutchins Cemetery.
Okay, just kidding.
No. Does it include the small cemeteries in some backyards?
Yep, yeah, so that's why I had to get like contact information for homeowners because we'd have to go like knock on their doors and ask them to go like in their woods and stuff, so yeah. Yep.
And we have a couple of representatives of the cemetery committee here with us. If they wanted to get up and say anything.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. My name's Ann Sanders. I'm on the cemetery committee, and we just wanted a few words to say how thrilled we were to have an intern this year. She's been invaluable. She devoted full-time hours to research, time in the field, and gathering data that would have taken us probably years to do. A handful of volunteers that have families and jobs, so this was great. So her work brought us from using hand-drawn maps with little dots on them that we had to go find cemeteries with into the 21st century with a full Excel data spreadsheet indicating our cemeteries and the capability to plot them on the town maps, like she said, so they could be on deeds in the future and whatnot. So just to give you an idea, in the past, when we would go out to search for a cemetery, we'd use our map, kind of like a treasure map, because it was all hand done, and it's old. It's from a generation ago, probably. And it was handwritten notes, looking for lateral landmarks, like take a left at the big oak tree, right at the big rock, and of course the landscape's all changed, and usually into forest. So now she has GPS'd almost all of them, and we can go right to it, and it has the coordinates, and they'll be on the town maps, so that will be great. And she also did a lot of research for our veterans. That's usually our first priority in cleaning up a cemetery, because there are so many cemeteries. And she went to the Southern Maine Veterans Cemetery in Sanford to get information. There are Kennebunkport citizens buried there. So there's further research being done there, just so we can have a list of our history. And we just wanted to thank the selectmen and the budget board for supporting this intern. This endeavor is invaluable to us and to the town. It'll increase our knowledge and the history of the town. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very,
Excellent.
very
Very
good.
much.
Yeah.
And we'd just like to thank our cemetery committee for all the work they do all year long, because their constituent is mostly silent.
Kendra, would you like to speak?
Werner, maybe you want to be Vanna.
Yep.
Good evening. I'm Kendra O'Rourke, and I am the water quality intern this summer. I have been working with Maine Healthy Beaches to collect data from the Goose Rocks Beach area with water samples. We do weekly monitoring from Memorial Day to Labor Day. This summer, we have created another little monitoring program where we are monitoring the Batson River as well as Little River and a few other areas. And we are doing 12 testing sites in the Goose Rocks area. With that data, we are finding hotspots that we're also correlating with a 2005 study that the Maine Healthy Beaches program had created. And we are finding where there are high points of bacteria. So we're trying to find contributions, trying to figure out why there are some hot areas or hotspot areas and why some are normal. Maine Healthy Beaches is also going to be helping us do a DNA test on certain areas and certain sites. That collection will be happening in the next few weeks. And we are expecting to get results in the fall. So be on the lookout for those. We have a septic system map right here. Another one of my projects has been mapping out septic systems in the Goose Rocks Beach area. We are trying to create a record with where all of the septic systems are. And they are color-coded based on the information that the town has. So whether they've been updated within a certain time or if there's no record at all, it correlates with different colors. In the past week, I've mailed out a letter, so some of you may be getting that. We are looking at inspecting septic systems within a 500-foot radius of any waterway in the Goose Rocks Beach watershed. So we will be going to certain places to just inspect them, and you may see us out and about. And another one of the projects that I've been working on would be catch basin mapping. So where the drainage pipes are, we do not have a current platform where you can look and see that there are catch basins in certain areas. So Tom Burns has also helped me with the GIS mapping of that. Matt Philbrick from the Code Enforcement Office helped me find different spots along the Goose Rocks Beach area. So hopefully in the next few months, we'll be adding that to the GIS mapping system. Again, there was no prior record of those areas, so we're excited to get that in there. And then the last thing that I worked on this summer was with the Conservation Commission. I was able to work with them to help them do a few projects that they haven't been able to get to quite yet. One of them being looking into a pesticide ordinance. So I was able to talk with Agunquit, South Portland, and Wells to talk to them about their pesticide ordinances to see if it would be a good fit for Kennebunkport. So I was able to gather that information. So if you have any questions, I can hopefully answer them for you.
No, it sounds like you were very productive. Both of you were very productive.
Thanks. Yeah.
That's,
And thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a really great summer.
Sounds like they did more work this summer than we did.
no.
And we really appreciate it, the whole town does.
Oh, well,
And
thank you. I mean,
Allison, did you want to contribute anything?
So Kendra has been incredibly busy, and I couldn't have done it without her because we have been out weekly doing this water quality testing 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week. It's a lot of computer entry with all the data that we've collected, posting the beaches if we've had to for contamination or rainfall advisories. She's been gathering lots and lots of information, logging it into the computer, making this incredible map. If you take a look at it up close, it's pretty neat. But she's been a pleasure to work with, and I couldn't have done it without her. So thank you for allowing her to be part of it this summer.
Glad we
Very
could.
Thank you.
Yeah.
very good.
Very good.
Thank
right.
you, guys.
Yes. Okay. Number 7, consider memorandum of understanding with the state of Maine regarding the establishment of a closed point of dispensary, also known as a pod.
So we have with us tonight Bob McDermott, who is one of our firefighters, but when he's not doing that, he's working with the state of Maine, and he brought forward an idea that staff is in agreement with, and Bob's going to give you a brief rundown.
Thank you for the opportunity to come down here and speak with you tonight. I'm a retired police officer who's now a resident of Kennebunkport now, and I'm working with the city of Portland on the City's Readiness Initiative. And what it is, it's a bioterrorism project, which is now, it has evolved into a public health project too. If there was an attack or if there was an influenza outbreak, is how do we get medical countermeasures from the stockpile, the federal stockpile, out to the citizens? Now, the region that we cover with the City's Readiness Initiative in Maine is York, Cumberland, and Saginaw County, which is 500,000 people. And based on the anthrax model, within 48 hours, we have to get these antibiotics or vaccines out to 500,000 people within 48 hours. So it's kind of a monumental task. There's 3 ways that we do it. The first way would be an open point of dispensing or a pod, where the Maine CDC advertises that we have a pod opening here, and anybody who needs medical countermeasures would go to that pod. Another one is a hybrid, which is a closed point of dispensing, which is for a specific community, like UNE is a hydropod, and UNE would treat their students and staff and then open up to the public. And then the third way is a closed point of dispensing. Now, the closed point of dispensing is not advertised to through any CDC to the public, because it's not open to the public. But through the MOU, there's only a small group that you're allowed to give these countermeasures out to. But we need to take the pressure off these pods. There's 3 in York County for 200,000 people, and the numbers just don't add up. So we're trying to hit businesses of over 1,000 employees, and there's not a lot of them here. So I came up with this idea that why don't we try making some of the towns closed points of dispensing. Now, if you guys agreed to become a closed point of dispensing, the medical countermeasures, once the governor declares an emergency, would come from the federal government, from the Fed CDC to Maine, and then be delivered directly here to Kennebunkport and dispensed, whether it's through a walk-through pod model or a drive-through pod model, and it would strictly be for the residents of Kennebunkport, employees, and the families of the employees, because it's a business continuity model. We want to make sure that everybody can come to work. You know, if there's an emergency and everybody has to go over to Wells to the open pod and stand there for an hour or two to get their medication, they're not coming to work. But if they know that Kennebunkport, we have the medication, it's available to you and your family, you can come to work and we'll take care of you. So that's pretty much in a nutshell what we're trying to do. And we've talked about some different locations and way to do it. I'm coming here first because it's my new hometown and I'm a firefighter, but you guys also have a unprecedented for the state of Maine dedication to public health, because you have 2 public health nurses, which makes this project very easy for Kennebunkport.
Would the nurses be the ones handing out the medications? I mean, would there be a physician necessary?
It depends on what the pathogen is. If it's an antibiotic pathogen, the state of Maine has a non-medical procedure for doing this, that people handing out the antibiotics are not medical people, where at that point Allison would be the pod manager and would just be there to help for support, to help run the pod, and help if anybody had any questions. If it's a vaccine, now obviously we would need medical people, and depending on the scope of the emergency, right now that would have to be nurses or doctors or pharmacists, but the governor could say down to EMT level training with a little special training could also be vaccinators. So, you know, it depends on what the model is and what the pathogen is. But you would be, as part of it being a closed pod, it's not advertised, it's not open to the general public, but it's also self-sufficient. It's also, you would use the resources here in Kennebunkport to man that pod. If there are, through the Medical Reserve Corps, through the state of Maine, if we needed extra nurses, we could request extra nurses to come in, but if we're opening up 30 pods throughout the state of Maine, or 40 pods, or worst case, even more, those nurses aren't going to be available. But we have other, it doesn't have to be your 2 public health nurses. It could be retired nurses coming in. You know, my wife lives over in Lilac Lane. We could come over and help. You know, so it's the resources that are here in town that make it special, and make it doable.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
It's also critical infrastructure too. You get your police officers, firefighters, your EMTs, DOT, your public works people to keep the roads opening and to keep the city functioning. You know, that's an important part of this too, the continuity business here for Kennebunkport. We don't get shut down.
Very good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
Do we have to, we don't have to vote on it.
Okay. Number 8. I lost it. Consider amendment to solid waste rules and regulations.
Wait.
Oh.
So everybody is in agreement that.
Do we have to vote on it?
So you need to vote to authorize me to
Do we have a motion?
sign the memorandum of understanding.
Second.
All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. Okay, number 9. No, number.
No, 8.
They're misnumbered. That's okay.
Oh, right, because
we skipped it, right. Consider amendments to solid waste rules and regulations. This one's pretty easy.
So the amendment is the removal of asbestos shingles from acceptable waste, as Casella will not take asbestos shingles, and we're just trying to make sure our rules are in alignment with reality.
Do we need a motion and a vote on that? Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? The ayes have it. Number 9, consider purchase of 13 Barner's pumps for the wastewater department. I don't see Chris here this evening. Who is?
Chris is not here, so I'm representing wastewater.
Okay.
This is the normal grinder pump replacement program that we do each year, and they're looking to purchase 13 new grinder pumps. They have been purchasing Barnes pumps for the past few years. They've been happy with their performance.
Oh, thank you.
And since this is sole source, they are requesting authorization for that.
Motions?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Here's
So
to
moved.
Alan,
Yes.
who started this whole thing.
What they do wrong now?
No,
No,
Alan.
that Alan.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Alan Moyer. Number 10, consider proposal for engineering work to replace the Ocean Avenue Village seawall from Fairfield Creek to the Nonantum Hotel. I don't see Mike tonight.
Mike has been delayed. Perhaps we could come back to this.
Okay. We shall. Okay, number 11, consider draft road acceptance policy. Lori?
At the last board meeting, there was discussion about having a policy to review in regards to private and public roads acceptance. So this policy is a very rough draft at this point, but it gets down to road acceptance requirements, and those, as we expressed, were leading to a public facility, connecting to other streets, or that it becomes a thoroughfare, or that it has some other public benefit. And what I've tried to lay out here is a procedure for your consideration. And this procedure would be that at the beginning of a development, the developer makes known to the planning office whether they intend for the road to be public or private. If they intend for it to be public, that they go to the Board of Selectmen and get some confirmation from the board that they agree that the road would have public benefit as currently designed. If it is, they would bring that back to the planning board, and also the town engineer, whether that be a consultant or staff, review that, and any of those comments and feedback that get included in that process. If the developer says that they would like it to be a private road, then it will meet the town specifications for road design that are currently in the regulations. And if it was approved by the planning board, and then after 75% of the homes are constructed, it could be brought forward for a town meeting vote.
I think this is a lot more cleaner way of doing it. It's specific, and I'm all in favor of something like this.
And Werner's here, certainly, if you have any questions about that process piece, or and Mike will be here to talk about roads if you would like.
Number
No.
Can we ask questions from the audience about this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, certainly.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I would like to say something before we start this. No, please go ahead to the mic. The reason for this is, at our last meeting, we've been made aware that we are running out of highway capacity in the winter to remove snow. And we have decided, we have turned down, for those listening at home, we have turned down other subdivisions before. And we are really trying to make sure that if we accept subdivisions, that they have benefit to the entire town. Because it costs a lot of money. It would cost us over $300,000 to accept any more subdivisions at this point. We simply do not have the capacity to plow anymore. You know, we would have to hire extra staff, and we'll have to buy a new truck, a truck specifically to plow the smaller roads of subdivisions, as opposed to our larger town roads, the major thoroughfares through town.
And we're doing, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we're doing this now so that people who are planning on having roads know, what they're going to have to do. And I'm aware that Reed Road was probably in the process of I guess you had to make changes, or you went ahead and made changes because there were specific things that hadn't been done yet.
Well, they haven't made the changes yet. I went and took a look up
But some
there,
of
too.
them have been made.
Yes.
Which monetarily was a good chunk of change, I think. So don't give up hope. That's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I think I probably speak for everybody based on conversations we've been having, and I hope others will come up as well. It begs a few questions. If in fact you're saying that any new subdivisions would require additional equipment, are you saying then that there will never be any new subdivisions?
Perhaps.
Okay.
I think
I'm
what
not
we
sure
would
you
say
can
is
come to
that
that
any
conclusion.
subdivisions, if we look at this piece of paper here, what we're saying is that any new subdivisions would have to provide a significant benefit to all of the town, not just people who live on a specific road.
That's only accepting, if you were accepting that road.
That is correct.
So it's accepting future roads, is that how I'm to understand this?
From today forward, well, from the time that this ordinance is enacted forward, yes.
What about the roads that were approved, the planning was approved by the town?
No roads have been approved.
Not as a public road, but I mean, the planning process, from what we're told, the dimensions and what have you were done based on the
Well, that gets back to
requirements?
this, because I do think that, I don't like the system as it is now, because it implies that it would be accepted, and that's not a fair treatment to say, well, if you build it to this standard, the town will accept it, because here we are now, we can't accept any more roads, we just don't have the capacity to deal with them.
If those changes, which we learned of this late winter, curb cuts and what have you, which I believe they were designs presented to accept where the highway department would put the snow along the circles and along the straightaways, there would be a bond that would be issued, from what I understand, from the developer to have the monies to make these changes. If that's done, would that meet the requirements of the board, or are there other things that we have yet to see that we should have been doing to make it happen?
No, it would not meet the requirements of the board, and I'm happy to explain why. There were specific requirements set forth in order to apply for acceptance, and they have not been met, and a bond is not meeting that requirement. It may sound on the surface as though it would, because you're saying that you will do this work in the future, but we need the work to be done now before we can put it on the November warrant.
Let me explain a little more, because I live on a private road that is ample, would meet these requirements going forward. Years ago, before I became a selectman, I asked about what would be the possibility of having the town take over the road. And we were told, well, there isn't anything in the ordinances that say they will. If you build it wide enough and properly, that we will take it over. So it has to be voted on each individual case as you go along. And that's kind of vague, and it probably worked against to some people. So there are people who have brought roads through this whole process and applied and were approved. And they're the ones that are probably saying, oh, well, that's how we did it, boom, 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 your turn. Not every road that went through the process was accepted going forward. So with the additional constraints that Ed was mentioning, the problems that we're getting more of these, and it is a situation that the town can't deal with cost-wise, and how do we do it? Well, you don't want to buy big dump trucks either. There's got to be a solution, but I can't say that we're in a position to say to every developer, build the road wide enough and properly, and we'll take it over. The town is just not equipped to do that.
See, years ago, we never had these big issues like we are having, all the building and all the subdivisions coming into our town. You know, we're overwhelmed by it, and we just don't know how, without buying new equipment and hiring more people to do the plowing, road maintenance, and everything else. It's just so much money.
I think we understand that. The gentleman that came with their equipment to our road this winter said that should the snow dumps be created, that the current equipment would work around the circumferences and what have you. And so I guess that's why we're kind of puzzled.
Who said this?
There were two gentlemen that came from the road.
Highway department.
The highway department. One with the truck that had the blade, and explained that if those snow dump areas, as he called them, where the curbs would be cut, and then there would be places for the snow to be piled, their trucks would be able to get through there, the existing trucks.
Well, I think you're maybe correct in that, and I don't know. Mike Claus, I wish he was here. He told us that. Is he here? Oh, Mike, there you are. I'm going to throw you under the proverbial plow here, but it's more than that. It's also a matter of manpower. You know, we have, including yours, at least 4 new subdivisions. We cannot accept all of them. And I also want to make it clear that the last subdivision that came to us was Foxbury Woods and asked for their road to be public, and we denied them, all 5 of us.
So there's an unreasonable expectation, as I said, based on nothing concrete, that you build a road, you get it approved. That's not true. It's never been true. That's the thing.
And
Okay, can we ask
questions?
additional questions?
Questions?
Sure.
Up here.
Yes.
Thank you very much for considering.
Thank you.
I'm not a lawyer, in case you're wondering. I'm a resident. My wife and I just closed on our house on Reed Lane less than 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Happy to be part of the community. Maybe a couple quick questions. I understand a $300,000 fixed cost investment. As I think about the 9 residents that are currently paying for snow plowing, it's being subcontracted for a relatively modest fee compared to a large fixed cost investment. Has the town given any consideration to subcontracting at a much more modest level than incurring $300,000 for the next new subdivision?
That's something that we'll probably wind up discussing.
Okay, because I mean, it just seems like that's another option.
My concern with that would be, and you know, I don't want to have a massive open discussion on this tonight, but if we accept your road and we do that, then all the other subdivisions out there are going to come back and ask us to subcontract for their roads. My real concern, you know, I've said this before, I'm a fiscal conservative, and your road only benefits 9 residents of the town. You all paid very handsomely for your lots and your property. I understand that, but I don't see where the justification for the other residents of the town to subsidize your costs are. Aside from the fact, we put aside that we just don't have the capacity to do that right now.
Right.
I'm not going to shut the door on you and say, no, this never will be. I mean, there's 5 of us here, and chances are in 10 years there'll be a different 5 of us.
I guess I might think about it a little differently.
We don't have a lot of control over contractors.
Right.
I mean, sometimes you might think you do, but I think that we would have more problems contracting, plowing your roads out, simply because they
Ask
don't work
Kennebunk
for
how well
they
that
don't
works.
really
Right.
work for the town.
Yeah. Although they're contracted by the town and accountable to the town. I guess as I think about it, I'm trying to think of questions I can ask as opposed to making a statement. But it seems as though the appropriate way, and I applaud you for doing this, is to do it at the front end. Set objective criteria, and if people meet those, then it's less of an arbitrary decision after the fact. I guess I'd also challenge your thinking, at least in the draft, about what's public benefit, and having a road connect to another road might be one variation of a definition. But my wife told me this morning, she was up early, I was at work. There are a number of people walking up into the neighborhood, joggers, etc. it's an extension of the community. And I'm not sure that just connecting to another road is, you know, is where the definition of public benefit should stop. I think being new to the town for only 2 weeks, but being a CPA, thinking about some of the math about adding to tax base, tax revenue, et cetera, thinking about the services that you're going to need to provide against that additional tax revenue. I would think that 9 houses that bring, I'm going to just pick a number, I don't know, $120,000 of additional tax revenue into the town with probably relatively modest to minimal additional expense. As I'm looking at my neighbors, I don't know all of them well. I don't think they have a lot of kids in the school systems, et cetera. So it seems...
Well, we wish they did.
We used to.
No, it's a problem. Moving from New Hampshire and having lived in Vermont with declining class size, it's a problem. I understand that.
Well, I used to be the road commissioner
Yeah.
for my neighborhood. You know, it's 15 houses on this big lot. And I know exactly what you're dealing with. The thing that you run into, if it's a normal winter, the roads get plowed. It doesn't seem to be a problem. Everybody can get in and out, and it's very comfortable. There have been winters where we had to bring in a front loader to widen that one lane that occurs because they can't push the snow. The guy with the blade needs a bigger blade, you know, the old thing, get a bigger hammer, you know what I mean?
Need a bigger boat.
And so you deal with this from year to year. But when you need extra help, everybody needs extra help. So the contractors are overloaded, and chances aren't going to give satisfactory service. And think about it, if the town is providing this service and it's not satisfactory, you know, what happens at the end of that day? It gets very contentious. You know, so these are the things that we're balancing. How do
Yeah, no, I understand. I'll sit down, but I guess I would ask if you would think hard about what constitutes public benefit, if you would think hard about alternatives to a $300,000 relatively significant fixed cost for the next subdivision as opposed to more incremental potential subcontracting. And I'd ask you to think about the math and ultimately whether you want the town to grow or not grow, and if you do, in what way. But when I think about tax-based tax revenue, incremental costs being relatively modest, I understand your situation. Having lived in a small town in Vermont for 22 years as we were raising our kids, faced with a lot of the same kinds of decisions. But I would just ask you to, I know you're thinking about that, but
Well, would you consider running for this Board of Selectmen?
after I get settled in and have been here longer than 2 weeks, possibly.
We have other boards if you're interested.
Yeah, no, seriously, that's an honest question.
No, and I talked to, Deb and I met with Warner, and we talked a lot about workforce housing and affordable housing.
Yes.
Which, coming from New Hampshire and Vermont, we can't keep restaurants open because we can't hire wait staff. You show up and it's closed, and aging population, et cetera, it's going to get worse. So I actually was fascinated by the amount of work that's already been done in the Kennebunk area on this topic. I mean, you're way out in front of a lot of other places.
Well, we've known about this, and we're working on getting a
Yeah,
solution.
I mean, it's a big problem, and Maine is the oldest state in the country,
Yes, we
followed
know.
by New Hampshire and Vermont, which I know you know. So, thank you.
Thank you. And again, welcome to town. All right, number 12, consider...
So can I ask just?
Yes, you
For
may.
some feedback on the policy and what action you want us to take at this point, if any, or do you want to give it more consideration? Do you want us to review it with our attorney? Do you want to
I
do
want to
nothing?
proceed.
Yes.
Because I think, and I'm speaking personally, the people on this street were asked or led to believe that if they did this, 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 and this, that the town would accept their road. That's what I'm understanding.
That the town, right.
Or that it would be put on the warrant.
Yes.
I think this needs to be done as soon as possible.
I do too.
Yes.
If we are going to put a stop to
I'd-
taking on private roads.
I'd like to see this go to our attorney, just to look it over.
Yep. With any additions and corrections.
Because I agree with you, Bob. I think that what they told you and what we have had to make for a decision is difficult. You know, it's not the decision you wanted to hear tonight, but it doesn't come lightly.
And, you know, we're trying to balance the highway department with the number of people who are coming to town and the number of subdivisions that we're getting into.
You've been here as long as I have. You've seen
Longer
what's
than
happened
me.
here. Yes. We won't discuss that.
So I'd like to move forward with this if we could.
Yeah. Do we take a vote on that?
Get the attorney's opinion.
So I'm taking that I should have Amy review it?
Yes.
And then bring it back to you with any changes?
Correct.
Yes.
So do we want to go back one, because Mr.
Mike's
Crosby's
here.
here?
Oh, where are
Oh,
we?
right, right,
Number
right.
11, which
To
is probably
the
formerly number
10.
11, now number 10, now serving number 10. Consider proposal for engineering work to replace the Ocean Avenue Village seawall from Fairfield Creek to the, Nantum Hotel. I feel like Groundhog Day. Mike?
So apologies, I did space the meeting. Thank you for Arlene giving me a call. So
But
the
you
Ocean,
biked over here, I'm impressed.
I was checking out Circus Smirkus. They're doing a great job out on Arundel Road.
Good.
Oh, good.
Out on, we've been working with Woodard and Curran on the seawall along Ocean Avenue between Fairfield Creek by the Sonny's Lobster Pound and Nanum Hotel since about 2009 when we first started noting deterioration there. And their original cost estimates on repairing that wall were quite high, but it was based on some climate adaptation costs that they'd put in for raising the roads. And in talking with Woodard and Curran, we came up with a plan to repair the wall without having to raise the road, but make it so that the wall design that we're doing would be adaptable if in the future the town did want to raise the road. We wouldn't have to redo the wall, we would just add on to the wall. So that was in their preliminary design costs, and they have gone through quite a bit of work to get to that point. So we're now past preliminary design. The town has approved funding to repair the wall, and I'd like to have Woodard and Curran go on with the design of the wall and get that out to bid. And they've given us a proposal to do that for $58,000, which is a lot of money, but I think given the amount of work we're going to do, that falls within a range that what engineers would pay for that. So I would like to ask you to approve a sole source contract for engineering design and bid documents to replace the retaining wall on Ocean Avenue.
So are you anticipating raising the road?
At this time, we're leaving the road at the same level, but the wall will, whatever guardrail we choose, depending on what kind we come up with, will be set so that we could add blocks to the wall and raise the wall up and raise the guardrail up to meet whatever elevation we want. So the wall will be built strong enough that if the road is raised, it will take that added load.
So you're saying it's modular?
Yeah. In the base.
So you do know that if you raise the road, you flood the buildings out?
We flood the buildings out. There's a lot there. I mean, you'd have to do a lot of engineering design for drainage.
And that's possible?
Yes. I mean, if water comes up, that will have to be dealt with anyway. So.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we award a contract to Woodward and Curran for $58,000.
Second.
In favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. 13, consider a request for use, number 12, consider street opening permit for Ben and Rebecca Thompson, 3 Temple Street, to tie into the storm drain for a sump pump line. This looks pretty boilerplate. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Third? All in favor? Okay, now number 13, consider request for the FY 2018 contingency account.
So I'll call Jan Lord, Treasurer, up to the podium.
Good evening. We are asking to use some money out of contingency to cover some of the overdrafts that we had this year. Some of those include the Kennebunk River Committee, the Shade Tree account, and the American Legion, and our insurance line. If you have any questions.
For $14,125.77?
The total, yes, $14,125.77. We had $60,000 in contingency and have not used any of that yet.
Right.
I'll move that.
Second.
All in favor?
That works.
All right, don't go
Thank you.
anywhere. Number 14, consider a request for FY 2018 carry forwards.
So I have a new sheet.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have it. The new total is 246 because Jen found another account on the
Sorry.
police debt payment for the building that she added to that.
Right.
Well, at least it's all staying in the town.
Yes.
Is this it?
I hope so. Trying to wrap up the fiscal year end. We are working on it with
Very
everybody's
good.
help. We're getting there.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept the carry forwards for fiscal year 18 for
256.
246, 784, 50.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes. Number 15, authorize treasurer to write off taxes in the amount of $129.33 for foreclosed property located at map 27, block 2, lot 6, Guinea Road.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? So moved.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. And number 16, authorize the town manager to enter into a 6-month agreement with the town of Kennebunk for a shared animal control officer. Laurie, would you like to?
I think we.
Oh, the chief.
She was gonna say it anyway, so.
All right.
And here he is.
Here's
So,
Johnny.
we would like to, enter into this agreement. We've been, using, a shared, ACO, for the last, month or so, and, we've had a couple of calls, that, they've responded to, and, it's been adequate. It's what we need. We've, been able to, handle a lot of the calls that we would normally would have handed to Mr. Conway, the officers have been handling those.
So it's working well, you say?
It is, sir.
The police have reorganized how they handle calls and have absorbed a lot of that work internally. So this agreement would cost us about 10% of the animal control officers' pay and benefits, along with mileage. We are estimating 10% would be 4 hours a week. So the next few months will give us some exercise in that and understanding, and then we will reevaluate in December.
And you would let us know if this becomes.
Untenable?
Correct.
Thank you for that word.
Or if it's a rousing success, we'll let you know.
Or if I have to catch the biggest, ugliest cat, bigger than the one I had to catch already.
All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, Craig. Motion passes. Okay, number 17, reappointment members of the Lighting Committee. We have 3 of them with different terms. Robert Fairbanks with a term of July 2020, and James Stockman also with a term of July 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
And Julie Garish with a term expiration of July 21. 21.
It
She's
should
gonna
have
be
been
around a while.
2021.
I don't think that's what they meant.
Okay, so let's,
How about 20?
2021.
Right. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Wasn't that an old folk song?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
For those who remember.
Yes, those are the.
I heard it on the K-tel records when I was a kid.
That's before my time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Number 18, consider proclamation to designate September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And I have a little proclamation here, if you'd like me to read it.
Yes.
The state of Maine is going gold in the month of September from this year forth in support of childhood cancer awareness. Whereas cancer is the leading cause of death of disease among U.S. children and is detected in more than 15,000 of our country's sons and daughters every year, and whereas in the state of Maine, cancer affects more than 50 new children and families annually, where more than 400 children are undergoing treatment currently, and we are ranked in the top range of incidences of all cancers at 468.3 per 100,000, somebody left off a zero there, people. And whereas September is nationally recognized as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas thanks to ongoing advances in research and treatment, the 5-year survival rate for all childhood cancers has climbed from less than 50% to 80% over the last several decades. And whereas innovative studies are leading to real breakthroughs, reminding us of the importance of supporting scientific discoveries and moving closer to finding cures though much work remains to be done. And whereas 1 in 5 children diagnosed will not survive. During National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, we remember the many children who have been taken from us too soon, and we extend our support to all those who continue to battle this illness with incredible strength and courage.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, number 19, accept a $1,000 donation from the Kennebunkport Side Rotary for the Emergency Fuel Fund.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, number 20, vote for MMA Vice President and 3 Executive Committee members. And Lori, where did we?
So the current slate of officers that have been proposed is Christine Lands from the town of Bethel, and as Vice President and Executive Committee members, Elaine Allos from Solon, Bill Brigio from Augusta, and Melissa Doan from Bradley.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept all.
Right. Second.
All in favor? Okay, we have to sign the assessor's return for county taxes. Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
Have a motion?
Can I just make a comment?
Yes.
This is a lot of money. And is there any, can we barter? I mean, is there any way of saying, hey, we already have our, we have our own police. We have our own, because I think what's happening is we're paying for a lot of the small towns and a lot of places that we don't even know exist down and around. And, has anybody ever tried to
Stiff the county?
not stiff the county,
You can't
but
stiff the county.
if a town like ours and Kennebunk and some of the others who have their own fire, who have their own police, who have a lot of this, it doesn't seem fair that we're also paying for all the other towns who don't.
Well, it includes the courts.
Well, I'm not saying not paying anything.
No, I understand. But
I would say these arguments have been fought
Yes.
in counties across the state, and I have been privy to some of them. I think when people say, well, we already have the police department, the county says, well, then we need the jails because you bring them there. So, many people have made these arguments, and people have questioned, what is the use of county government in Maine? And
I'm not questioning that they're there. I'm just questioning
right. What's
why
your
we're
fair
paying
share?
for everybody else.
And it is based on valuation, and that's how it's set up.
Once again.
Once in state statute. And so.
Go, David.
Go ahead, Dave.
Go, David.
get them.
Dave James, and I happen to sit on the county Budget Committee.
I was
And
wondering when you were gonna get up.
It's a sore point every year.
Yeah.
The non-cop towns, we always see things up. For the most part, the county does try to contract with those towns. And sure, Arundel, for example.
Yeah.
They have a couple of sheriff department people, and they pay fully absorbed costs for those cops to come down and patrol in Arundel. Some of the smaller towns.
Is that additional to what the tax rate is? Is that an additional cost for the town of Arundel?
Yes.
Above and
Well,
beyond what their
Arundel
bill.
is paying that, yes, over and
Okay.
above
Yes.
their tax share, right? So the county commissioners try to do what they can, but there are some very small towns that go under the,
They just don't have the money.
right, they just don't have the money, and the county assumes some responsibility. They don't have 24-hour coverage, they don't have cops there all the time. Sometimes it takes half a day to get a county person out there to respond to a call from them. So, yeah, it's a sore point, but I'm not sure what we do with it.
I think based on valuation, pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
But I applaud you, Sheila.
Well, it was just a thought.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Number 21, approve the August 9th
Do we have to vote on that?
treasurer's warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Oh. We're gonna sign it no matter whether you vote on it or not.
Okay.
As long as our signatures are affixed and the check cashes, I don't think the county's gonna come down and check, see if we voted on it. Okay, now we're gonna move into executive session.
Before we do that,
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
like to make a comment. It's at the end of the meeting, while we're still in open meeting, so I think it's important for the people in our town to know that we've been very fortunate, because we nominated Laurie Smith to receive an award from the Maine Municipal Association this year. It's a statewide competition, if you will, and they bring in people everywhere, and everybody that's doing an outstanding job. Competition is very difficult. It is strong this year, exceptionally strong, but Laurie has been awarded the prestigious Leadership Award by the Maine Municipal Association here in the state of Maine. And we were up there yesterday to join in with her in the recognition of this event. And it was quite obvious there's a lot of talent there, but there is no doubt that Laurie exceeds in a much appreciated way by us with the kind of leadership, quality, dedication, creativity that she brings to this award. You know, in the Maine Municipal Association, the salaries are pretty much constrained. You cannot reward someone overly for doing an outstanding job for your town. In industry where we were before, you know, you get stock options. Having been the beneficiary of stock options in the past, it was a nice, appreciated thing. We don't have that here for Laurie. So this is the kind of recognition that they get for doing a hell of a fine job, and I want to applaud you.
I would just like to thank the board for nominating me, and I would tell you that you guys make it easy.
No.
Oh, no, we
No,
don't.
no.
I have worked in
reversed.
6 communities, and the work can either be made easier or harder, and you guys make it much easier.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I haven't finished my term as chairman yet, so.
So you're gonna plan on making it harder?
Yeah.
So I have 2 items, if I might.
You may.
One is I wanted to make sure the citizens know about the 2018 Citizen Police Academy. So this year, Kennebunkport Police is joining with Kennebunk Police. And the 12-week program starts on Thursday, August 30th and goes through the middle of November. The classes are held once a week at 3 p.m. In Kennebunk, and it's a great opportunity to get a behind-the-scenes look at what happens in your local police department and learn about evidence collection and all the intricacies that police have to go to. If someone is interested, they could contact either Kennebunk or Kennebunkport Police. The other thing is you received a letter today, which I'll pass down.
Now we get it.
from Preddy Flaherty, a law firm in Augusta, who is representing a coalition called Raise the Floor Coalition regarding low receivership school districts. And they're trying to get some legislation passed that would put a floor, a base on which everyone receives school dollars. And so they're of course asking for donations towards their cause. And so I wanted to make sure you're aware of it in case you want to participate.
It's the first I've heard of it.
Maybe we can discuss this at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori. Alan, do you have anything?
I'm all set, thank you.
Stu?
Nothing, thanks.
Pat, you've already spoken.
And I'm fine.
And I would just like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. We're going to move into executive session pursuant to Article 1, MRSA, Section 405, Paragraph 6-C, regarding discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property. And we will not be making any statements after that. We'll just simply adjourn.
We made a motion for
We
that.
have
So moved.
And you all voted?
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Quick question. Development, was that the read?
Hey, Alan. Should we